39 years ago, my biological mother was actually forced into a saline infusion abortion. And that type of procedure involved injecting a toxic salt solution into the womb. That toxic salt solution should have poisoned me, burned away the top layer of my skin, and my life should have been ended before she ultimately delivered a deceased child.
But you were delivered alive.
I was.
But injured, right? Alive but injured.
Yeah, people would never guess by looking at me today that when I first survived, I was fighting for my life. I weighed a little less than 3 pounds. I suffered from severe respiratory and liver problems, seizures. The doctors didn't believe I would live for very long, and if I did, I would suffer from multiple disabilities. Grew up knowing I was adopted, but didn't find out that I survived the abortion until I was 14, and it was absolutely devastating.
How did it impact you?
It impacted every part of my life, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was ashamed, embarrassed, felt guilty. I was angry. I told some people the other day, it impacted my relationship with God. I questioned how that could be the plan, in a good way, right? But also at the same time, kind of questioned how this could be the plan for my life. It was a very scary place and time for me. Now I am so thankful that this is who God made me to be. But yeah, I struggled with an eating disorder, alcohol abuse, poor dating relationships, because I was trying to distance myself from everything that I felt on the inside. And I always tell people, nobody but Jesus saved me from myself. I first forgave them a very long time ago. I was a teenager when I first forgave my biological parents. But I always remind people, I think forgiveness is a deliberate choice that we have to make. And it's not a one-time event. It's a process where you have to forgive over and over again. And so, now at this point in my life, I'm a mother. I have my own children. When they were born, I looked upon their lives and I had to forgive again because it brought up all of those old emotions and thoughts that I had worked through. It's all about perspective. And certainly I think everybody will go through a point in time where they might feel that rejection. I think that's pretty common, especially for abortion survivors that I know. But by and large, yeah, when you shift that perspective and you realize no matter what, God had a purpose and a plan for me. And no matter who else loves me, He loves me so much. Holding on to that is life-changing. I started looking for them when I was 19, so almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it took me over 10 years to find them. It took me 10 years to obtain my medical records. I lovingly refer to those years as my desert because I learned to really submit myself to God's will in that time, that if I was supposed to find them, if I was supposed to obtain my medical records, if I was supposed to come forward publicly, God would make a way. And of course He did. It was incredibly difficult. Even though it was affirming, right, to read those words and know how I struggled for my life, how that attempt was made on my life. At the same time, it was very hard to read about what was done to me and how I did have to fight for my life. Yeah, my birth father passed away about 9 years ago now. And I had had some contact with my birth mother's family about 10 years ago and had kind of really learned to live in peace, knowing I may never have contact with her. And of course, when I was at peace with that and comfortable, then God made a way once again. And so it was 4 years ago now that one of her family members contacted me. That's ultimately how I found out my grandmother forced the abortion upon my birth mother, that it wasn't her choice. And, I ultimately learned probably the greatest secret, and that is that my birth mother spent over 30 years of her life believing that I had died. That really, she had no other option. I mean, when I say that it was forced upon her, literally, she did not want to have that abortion. And she did not have any choice. And she's lived with incredible regret for the last 50-some years. But what I love about how God works is that she now knows that I'm alive and well, and she is loved and forgiven. And I wish everybody could have a story like this. I searched for her and never knew if it would really happen. And it was such a blessing, an honor to meet her and wrap my arms around her and give her a hug. And of course, now knowing the amount of pain and suffering that she's gone through in her life, it means